All right, once again, the recording or this call is being recorded, and the recording will be placed on YouTube channel. If you don't want to be recorded, please go ahead and drop off now. Welcome to this new session of Azure Power Lunch. Today's topic is about Azure scaling, or sorry, automatic scaling in Azure App Service. Let's get started. I have only a short presentation, then we'll go into the demo. Before we dig into that, as you know, Microsoft Build is next week. Please register. You could register in person or virtually. It's the Microsoft annual conference for developers and app makers. Highly encourage you to attend. There will be cool announcements there. Right, my agenda will quickly just look at scaling, what it is, why it's important. Then we'll see the new feature, the auto scaling, and I'll show you the difference between the new feature, the auto scaling, and the old feature that we have currently in Azure. And we'll have a look in the portal for a demo. So before actually we discuss the types of scaling, I want to step a little back and talk a little about why scaling is important. So imagine this scenario: if you were a small business, you had a great idea in mind, you are starting a new business, you still don't have the capital to spend a lot on the IT infrastructure. You had a tough choice to make. You either like run a small server that hosts your web application. Let's say it could serve up to 100 or 1,000 users. And then your business is taking off. You start to see more demand on your website. And now, because you have a small server, you cannot serve these users anymore. They are having issue with your website. Of course, you are a small business. If users having bad experience, you lost your business. You want to give them good experience, especially at the beginning. You are introducing your business to the market. So the other choice that you had, you invest a lot of capital upfront, even if you don't yet know if your business is successful or not. You've spent a lot of capital investing in the IT just to have massive servers, so you could possibly, or you could serve users in case your business is successful. So it was tough choice to make. Here now, when we have in the Azure or cloud world in general, you could really run an enterprise scale application with $300, $700 and serve the small user base that you had at the beginning. If your business is thriving, growing bigger, you could on demand grow with that, with the business, with just, let's say, scaling. Instead of having one server, now you have 10 servers, and then scale them down when the demand is less. So it makes the entry for small businesses much easier and cost effective. One of the reasons why scaling is very important. So I hope when we look at the portal, you will see that it's only a few clicks to set up scaling, but I hope you still could see the tremendous value of this capability of the cloud, to the ability to scale. So I don't think I need to introduce scaling like itself. Is basically you are adding capacity to meet demand up or down, or in or out. So there are, let me just also like set the base for anybody who's watching the video, just to make sure everybody's with us. I'm sorry, probably this is basic stuff you already know, but you could scale in two ways. You could scale vertically or horizontally, or up and down here, and I'm showing it on the left. Basically, this type of scaling, you are adding capacity to the server itself. So if you had a server of like 4 CPUs, as shows here all the way to the left, you could scale it up to 16 CPUs, 48 CPUs. Now, in the scaling horizontally or scaling out, the same size of the server, you're just replicating it, so it meets the demand by adding more instances. Few things to mention on scaling. This specifically applies to scaling up. It's limited in nature, so you could scale only as much as you could build. You could build a server with 200 CPUs, but eventually you will not build a server with 10,000 CPUs. So scaling out is usually preferred over scaling up. Also, pay attention to, I see that in some projects, scaling in general and scaling up particularly, you have the odds, or be careful that you are working against, if you want to call it like the law of diminishing returns. So say you have a website that you are running on a server that had 4 CPUs. Let's say the response time for the home page is 2 seconds. Now you scale up to 16 CPUs, the response time becomes 1 second, let's say. Now you scale up more, your response time becomes 500 milliseconds. At some point of your application, let's say at the 500 seconds, at some point that response time will not improve, even no matter like how many CPUs you throw at it, even if you put 100,000 servers, because that's it. You reached the maximum that where other factors other than the infrastructure comes into the picture. So pay attention to this point. Scaling up will not always improve performance. Scaling out the same, but it's this, this happens more on scaling up. So yeah, so wanted to mention something else if I remember it on scaling up. Yeah, actually I remembered. So you probably then asking at what point I know when to stop for scaling up. A good guidance is to 70% of consuming the resources on scaling up. At that point, you know that you had good skew here for scaling up. I'll show you the skews in Azure, but keep scaling up until you see, let's say, 70% of utilization of the underlying infrastructure. At that point, then look at scaling out. 70% is not something like hard set. It's just from experience, it's usually a good recommendation. You are consuming good amount of resources while you are keeping 30% for like the usual spikes of consumption. Of course, you profiled your application hopefully, and you know the demand, so you could play with this number more or less. But 70% usually, if you don't have any other metrics, is a good guidance, and then you start scaling out. Right, so that's on scaling in general. So now, how the new feature of automatic scaling works and what's the difference between the rule-based scaling that we currently have and the new feature that's still in preview of automatic scaling. I'd like to show you that in the portal. I think we'll discuss it while we are going. There are questions so far. I could take some now, but otherwise let's continue and see the options that we have here. So now I'm sharing my screen in Azure portal. I have 2 resource groups here created. This one already set up, configured. This one I called it work in progress. I'm gonna show you how we're gonna do the work here. I have a backup copy just in case, the demos usually don't like to work when you are presenting. All right, so this web app, I just deployed code from the template, from Visual Studio template. There's nothing at all special about this code. I just added a sleep here of 2 seconds and a message there to know that we are running our code when we see it in the log. All right, so this app service is currently running on a standard tier, as you can see here. So I'll go first and scaling this, scale it up. If you remember, scaling up, adding more resources to the underlying infrastructure. Here you could see actually it says a label that scaling will affect the entire app service beneath the app. So although I went to the app and I'm scaling it, still the effect will not only affect my app that's running on the app service plan, it will affect the entire plan. This is not totally accurate as because we introduced the auto scaling, which actually allows you to scale based on the app. So this is an old label. I expected to disappear. I should actually give that feedback to engineering. So it's one of the differences now that we see. Like the rule-based affects the app service plan. Automatic scaling, you could set it up to affect per app. I'll show you that in the portal. But now I want to scale this to a premium tier because automatic scaling doesn't work with standard or basic. It needs premium V2 or premium V3. Let's go with, let's say, premium V2. Let's scale this up. Yes, upgraded. So that will affect the cost here as the app is scaled up. Now, if I go back to scaling, I actually should have showed you scaling out when it was on standard. You would see that this is graded out. But now this is enabled. This is the new feature. As you can see, it's still in preview. Before I show you this, let me show you the rule-based, how it used to work. So then we could see how automatic is different. So yeah. So I'll go to rule-based. You could see that you could manually scale it. Just basically, you are gonna say that I know today I'll have a demand or high demand for the website. I'm gonna scale to 7 instances. We are interested in custom scaling to see. So here you could scale based on metrics. Of course, you could add a rule. That's what we used to do. And the rules could be like anything from CPU to inbound or like here the metrics, data in, data out, all these like sockets TCP. You could really fine tune this rule based. Say here, for example, in this case, what I'm showing, I'm saying if the CPU percentage is at 70%, then for duration of 10 minutes, then add one instance and then remove that instance if there are 5 minutes wait. I could have added that, and whenever now my website now, whenever it has 70% of CPU utilization, Azure will add a new instance. Now that's good and fine, but then as you could see, there are too many other factors that could affect uh, the response of or how responsive your website is. It doesn't have to be the CPU. Now, of course, you profiled your website. You know that certain operation and your back end affects that, particularly the CPU. That's why you set up the rule for CPU, or some operations are especially require uh, memory, for example. So you set the rule based on memory, but still you needed to set all these yourself. You cannot orchestrate all of them all together. So it was tricky task. Sometimes I would imagine that you would still need the rule based in some cases, still like versus automatic, because automatic doesn't give you this fine control over the what or how you are scaling. So that's enough looking at the rule base. This is the old feature. Again, we are interested in the how the new feature works. So let's go back to scaling and look at the automatic scaling. So here you could see pretty much there are only 3 things to configure. So automatic scaling basically looks at the HTTP load and scales up or down based on the HTTP traffic. So in the backend, it monitors all these metrics and makes sure that the HTTP traffic is served. One major difference between the automatic and rule-based, Azure waits until the threshold that you specified before it adds the instance. So there was no concept of pre-warmed instances. Here in automatic scaling, actually there's Azure is monitoring the traffic, but it always has one warm instance ready to take load. So that makes it very seamless on how it scales up. You barely notice. You can't notice like how to say responsiveness. Let's say yeah, at least in theory. Now, if one pre-warm instance is not sufficient, you could from the Azure CLI, you cannot do it from the portal. You could add more pre-warm instances, but make sure that this is something you really need, because one warm instance buffer is good, because the way it works, once the one pre-warmed instance works or kicks off, then Azure adds another one automatically. So there is always one pre-warm instance buffer that's running. So be careful before you increase that number, unless your app really needs it. Now, one last difference between the rule-based and automatic-based is this maximum burst. I don't know why they couldn't come up with more innovative or better names for describing these, but this maximum burst is saying that I want this service plan to only increase to 10 instances, no matter what the load. Even if the load requires 30, I don't want to pay for 30. I just want 10 instances. And the beautiful thing about the automatic scaling this new feature that then per app, you could say for this particular app, although the entire service plan, remember we said the scaling affects the service plan. That's why they had this label here. Now here you are saying the maximum burst per the plan is 10 instances, but for this particular app, I don't want it to scale more than 3. I don't want this to be noisy on other apps. So I wanted to scale only 3, the service plan to 10. We don't have this concept in the rule-based. So I don't need this feature, or I keep it. It doesn't matter for this in this instance, because I don't have multiple apps running. Right, and here they're always ready. You could set it to 3, and you have now 3 instances always ready. Keep it to 1. I'll keep this to 5. So basically, what I'm saying, I just want 1 running all the time, and I want 5 instances to run max for the service plan beneath my app, and this particular app I wanted to go only to 3. Let's save this and see how to test this. We could have tested it manually, but instead what I did, I created a load testing here, and let's try to hit the website with, let's say, 100 users and see how it scales up and down. I need the URL actually to run the unit, the load testing. So I'll take the URL from my website. The website again is very, very empty, very simple. I need the URL from it. I'll go back to my dashboard, go to the load testing resource. We need to test this URL, virtual users. I'll take, let's say, 100 virtual users hitting the website during 60 seconds. I don't need a ramp up time. Actually, just before I run the test, let's put this side by side here. Log into the Azure portal. I just want to open the live metrics to see the instances going up and down. I don't know where the dashboard went. Oh, I see what happened. It switched me back to different directory. I Okay, this is the work on progress, the one that we had. This is my application. I'll go to live to the application insights, go to the live metrics. Now what we expect to see here is one instance. Of course, I didn't yet start the load testing. So yeah, the server's online showing one. Now what we expect to see if I'm hitting from the load testing the screen on the right, I hope the text is big enough for you to see, guys. But so on the right here screen, I have the load testing is not run yet, but what we expect to see when we run it, we expect this to scale up based on the demand, because there is now demand. 100 users are at the same time hitting the website. So let's run it and see. Now this will take a second to provision the test. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask. Test will run shortly. We are still at one server. One time when I ran it, it went down to 0. It's interesting. Of course, as you know, if it goes down to 0, that's because there's a pre-warm instance ready, and it goes down to 0. You're not saving money, of course, but you are making resources available for other apps. So it orchestrates at the app service, and it puts the capacity or the power behind the apps that are being consumed the most. Or most likely it won't go to 0 now. The app is running and we hit it one time. It only goes down probably if it's idle for several hours. This didn't run yet here, so we still see one instance. Failure. Let's see. Welcome to the demo. This is like, yeah, it's not a local issue. All right, so the test started here to the right. You could see the servers online are 3. Remember, I set it up to 5. So it's going up to now 4 servers are serving these users. I put it for 60 seconds. After 66, yeah, it should decrease. It's removing servers. So basically, I just set like 3 things up and auto scaling, and now we are meeting the demand. So this really makes scaling in general makes, like, if you have a website that costs $300 or a website of a massive enterprise, they both are responsive the same pretty much. Like, so even a website that's $700 could be as responsive as Amazon.com. It's, if you think about it, for like small businesses, this is like really really great feature or capability, I want to say, of the cloud. Right, so we are at 4 servers. While this still runs, we are monitoring it. One thing I noticed, I went initially to set up the demo. I went to one of my old apps. I scaled it up and then tried to set up autoscale. Autoscale failed for me. Now, of course, we are in preview. I gave that feedback to engineering. By the time we are in GA, hopefully these stuff would be ironed out. But if now you want to try it and you go to websites that were created, let's say 2 years old previously, and you want to enable auto scaling, if it fails, it's probably because it's it's not something you are doing wrong. It's probably because those VMs are an old stamp or something. Right. So we saw it going up, we saw it going down, meeting the demand. That's the power and beauty of auto scaling. Again, I still see room for rule-based and in some cases, but that's what you want to go with unless you have a specific reason for going for rule-based.
Folks, any questions? And Allah, thanks for showing the live demo, man. That's always interesting, especially with the load testing, So it's kind of, but
Sure.
yeah, it's very powerful. I mean, the number of servers went up and then it's going down. So
So it's actually like a really it's nice capability, really, like especially with like you don't need to configure much to have this ready. So yeah, right, cool guys. So if there are no questions, that's the demo of today. Again, I want to remind you of build, register for your registration. You could attend it virtually. You don't have to be in person. Of course, if you are in Seattle, you are welcome to attend in person too. But yeah, register for build, and till next week and for another session of our Azure Power Lunch. Have
Thank
a
you,
great day,
Allah, for a
everybody.
great presentation.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. And let me don't turn off the prezo. Don't stop sharing. Let me stop the recording first. Okay.
Oh yeah,
Thank you
absolutely.
very much, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.